The Hall of Extinction stood at the center of the Confederation capital world, a massive structure that reached toward the purple sky. Inside its walls, the galaxy kept its darkest records. Every species that had tried the gauntlet of ascension and failed had their final moments stored here. Thousands of names, thousands of deaths, not a single survivor. Kang Daehyun walked through the empty corridors with careful steps. He was not supposed to be here. The hall was forbidden to anyone outside the council, and humans were definitely not council members. But Daehyun was a xenoarchaeologist, and his entire career was built on going places he was not supposed to go. His fingers moved across a small device he had built himself. The security systems in the hall were old, designed centuries ago. They were good at keeping out armies, but not so good at keeping out one man with patience and the right tools. The device hummed softly as it created a blind spot in the sensors. Daehyun slipped through another doorway. The archive room was enormous. Holographic displays floated in the darkness, each one showing the final moments of a species that had entered the trial. Daehyun watched one display show a four-armed creature running through a metal corridor. Something hunted at something fast. The creature died screaming. The display reset and played again. Daehyun forced himself to look away. He had a job to do. He moved to the central terminal and began searching through the files. Most of the records were complete. Birth world, species name, trial date, time of death, everything neat and organized. The council kept good records of their failures. But then Daehyun found something strange. File designation, anomaly 7, status, corrupted. Species data unavailable. Homeworld quarantined. Date 300 years ago. Daehyun's heart beat faster. Corrupted files were not common in Confederation archives. They backed up everything multiple times. For a file to be corrupted meant someone had worked very hard to damage it. He pulled up what remained of the file. Most of it was fragments, pieces of sensor data that made no sense. But buried in the corrupted mess was a video file. Daehyun opened it. The screen showed a trial chamber. The walls were dark metal covered in scorch marks. Automated defense systems lined the ceiling, their weapons pointing at empty space. The chamber looked like every other trial room Daehyun had seen in the archives. But something was different. On the far wall, someone had written a message. The letters were crude, carved into the metal with something sharp. The universal trade script, readable by any species in the galaxy, survived. Bored now. Thanks for the workout. Below the message were coordinates, a star system with no name. Daehyun stared at the screen. Someone had survived the gauntlet. Someone had not only survived, but had been confident enough to leave a message mocking the trial. And the council had buried this information so deep that even the archive file was corrupted. He copied the data to his personal device. His hands shook slightly as he worked. This was bigger than unauthorized access to the hall. This was proof that the council had lied to the entire galaxy. Step away from the terminal. The voice came from behind him. Daehyun turned slowly. Adjudicator Trell stood in the doorway. The insectoid's compound eyes reflected the light from the holographic displays. Behind Trell, 6 armed guards raised their weapons. All of them pointed at Daehyun. "You are under arrest for violating the sanctity of the Hall of Extinction," Trell said. His translator device turned his clicks and whistles into words. "You will be detained and tried according to Confederation law." Daehyun raised his hands. "I just wanted to look at some old files." "You accessed protected data." Trell moved closer. His movements were quick, predatory. "You copied files marked for council eyes only. Why?" "Because I found something interesting," Daehyun said. He kept his voice calm. "Someone survived the gauntlet 300 years ago. The council hid the evidence. Why would they do that?" Trell's antennae twitched. For a moment, something like fear crossed the adjudicator's face. Then it was gone. "You know nothing," Trell said. "Take him." The guards moved forward. Daehyun did not resist as they bound his hands. But as they led him toward the door, he smiled. The guards saw the smile and exchanged nervous looks. "Something amusing?" Trell asked. "I already sent the data," Daehyun said. "Before you walked in? My partner has everything. The corrupted file, the message, the coordinates. All of it." Trell's calm shattered. Who did you send it to?" "Someone who knows what to do with it," Daehyun said. Across the galaxy, on a small station at the edge of human space, Lee Mina sat in the cockpit of her ship. The vessel was old but reliable. built for speed and modified for jobs that required discretion. Mina had a reputation in the colonial network. If you needed something moved quickly and quietly, you called her. Her communication panel beeped. Incoming message from Daehyun. She opened it and started reading. At first, she thought he was joking. A human surviving the gauntlet? Impossible. Everyone knew the trial was a death sentence. No species had ever completed it. But then she saw the video file. The message carved in metal. The coordinates. Mina's hands moved across her controls. She pulled up star charts and compared them to the coordinates. The location was in uncharted space far beyond any Confederation patrols. A place where no one went. A place where someone might hide something they did not want found. Her comm panel beeped again. This time it was a live message from Daehyun. The video was choppy, clearly coming from a weak signal. Mina listened carefully. Daehyun's face appeared on the screen. Behind him she could see the metal walls of a prison cell. They caught me. I'm on a council ship heading to the capital for trial. But that does not matter now. Of course it matters, Mina said. They will lock you up for years. Not important, Daehyun said. He leaned closer to the camera. What matters is the coordinates. Someone from our species survived the trial 300 years ago. The council buried the evidence. You need to find out what they left behind. Daehyun, this is crazy. Even for you, I know, he smiled. But think about it. The council has built their entire government on the idea that only worthy species can pass the trial. If humans passed it 3 centuries ago and they hid that fact, what else are they hiding? What else are they afraid of? Mina was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. I will go. But you need to stay alive. No heroic sacrifices. I will do my best, Daehyun said. The signal started to break up. Mina, be careful. If the council buried this once, they will do anything to keep it buried now. Watch your back. The signal died. Mina sat in her cockpit staring at the coordinates on her screen. This was possibly the most dangerous job anyone had ever offered her. The kind of job that could get her killed or worse. She smiled and started her pre-flight checks. 20 minutes later, her ship lifted off from the station. Behind her, Confederation patrol vessels received alerts about an unauthorized departure. They scrambled to intercept, but Mina was already gone, jumping into faster-than-light travel. On the council ship, locked in his cell, Daehyun lay on his bunk and smiled at the ceiling. The guards thought he was defeated. They thought arresting him had stopped whatever plan he had started. They were wrong. Humans had been in the galaxy for 300 years and the council had never known. What else had humanity accomplished that the galaxy did not know about? Daehyun closed his eyes. Soon everyone would find out. Mina's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the coordinates. Her sensors immediately started screaming warnings. The entire star system was surrounded by a network of ancient warning buoys, thousands of them, all broadcasting the same message in dozens of dead languages. Containment zone. Authorized personnel only. Trespassers will be eliminated. The buoys were old, really old. Mina's computer estimated they had been floating here for at least 5,000 years, maybe more. But despite their age, they were still active. Energy readings showed weapons systems online and tracking her ship. Just my luck, Mina muttered. She brought up the defense protocols Daehyun had taught her. He had spent years studying ancient Confederation technology, learning how their systems thought. Now she would find out if his lessons were worth anything. She broadcast a clearance code that Daehyun had pulled from corrupted council files. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the weapon stopped tracking her. The buoys went silent. Mina let out a breath she had not known she was holding. She pushed her ship forward, moving deeper into the system. The planet appeared on her screens. It was a beautiful world, covered in blue oceans and green continents. But as she got closer, Mina saw the ruins. They covered the surface like scars, massive structures that had been destroyed long ago. The remains of cities, defense stations, research facilities, all abandoned, all dead. She landed near the largest ruin, a complex that stretched for kilometers across a plateau. The structure was enormous, built from materials she did not recognize. Parts of it were collapsed, but much of it still stood. Mina put on her environmental suit and stepped outside. The air was breathable according to her sensors, but she was not taking chances. She activated her scanner and started walking. The ruins were a graveyard, not just of buildings, but of species. Mina found remains everywhere. Bones that were too large, skeletons with too many limbs. Skulls with eye sockets in wrong places. Dozens of different species all dead in the same location. This is where they came after failing the trial, Mina said to herself. Her voice sounded strange in the empty ruins. They tried to hide here, to survive, but the defense systems found them anyway. She moved deeper into the complex. Most of the rooms were empty or filled with debris. But then she found a section that looked different, newer. The walls were still standing and someone had patched holes with metal plates. Someone had lived here recently. Very recently, Mina found the door to what looked like a living space. She pushed it open. Inside was a room that any human would recognize. A bed, a table, shelves with tools and supplies. Everything was organized, clean, maintained. And on the walls were writings, notes, observations, all in Korean. Her hands shook as she approached the nearest wall. The handwriting was old-fashioned, the kind people used centuries ago. But it was clear, readable. Day 30 completed the trial. The machine stopped hunting. The council probably thinks I am dead. Good. Let them think that. Day 45 found this facility. It is full of remains from other species that tried the trial. They all ran. They all hid. None of them thought to fight back. Idiots. Day 100, I have decided to stay. The council wants to use this trial to judge species? Fine. I will leave something here for when the next human comes, because there will be a next human. We do not give up. The notes continued for pages. Months of observations. Years. The author had stayed on this planet studying the ruins, analyzing the defense systems, documenting everything. Mina found a personal log device on the table. She activated it. A hologram appeared showing a man in his 30s, Korean features, tired eyes, but a strong smile. My name is Park Ji-hoon, the hologram said. If you are watching this, you are probably human. And you are probably wondering how I survived the gauntlet. The answer is simple. I cheated. The hologram smiled wider. The trial is designed to test how species react to fear. The machines hunt you. Reality shifts around you. Everything tries to kill you. Most species panic. They run, they hide, they try to find shelter. The defense systems are programmed to track those behaviors. The more afraid you act, the better they hunt you. Ji-hoon leaned forward in the recording. But I stopped running on day 3. I started watching the machines instead, learning their patterns, understanding their programming. And on day 15, I stopped being prey. I became the hunter. The hologram showed images. Ji-hoon taking apart a defense drone using nothing but scrap metal. Ji-hoon setting traps using the environment itself. Ji-hoon turning the trial chamber into his personal workshop. By day 25, I had disabled half the defense systems. By day 30, the trial just gave up. The machines could not understand what I was doing. I was not following any pattern they recognized. Ji-hoon's expression became serious. After I won, the council came. They saw what I had done, and they were terrified. Not of me, specifically, of what I represented. A species they classified as primitive and warlike had beaten their sacred trial using nothing but stubbornness and creativity, so they declared me dead. They quarantined this entire system. They erased the records. The hologram glanced to the side at something outside the recording. I could have left. Could have gone back to Earth, told everyone what happened. But I decided to stay. This place is perfect for what I want to build. A library. A message. For the next human who comes here. The recording ended. Mina stood in the quiet room. Her mind raced. Ji-hoon had survived. He had beaten the trial. And then he had stayed here for years, maybe decades, leaving behind everything humans would need to do it again. She found what he had built in the next room. It was a workshop full of tools and weapons. But more importantly, it was full of data. Maps of every trial chamber in the galaxy. Analysis of defense system programming. Guides for surviving environmental hazards. Everything organized, labeled, ready to use. On the central table was a final message carved into the metal. If any human finds this, remember, they do not get to tell us what is impossible. We decide that ourselves. Now go show them what we can do. Mina was reading through the data files when her ship's alarm started blaring. She ran outside and looked up. Confederation ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel above the planet. At least a dozen of them, all military vessels. Her comm panel crackled to life. Unidentified vessel, this is Commander Vren of the Confederation Fleet. You are in a restricted zone. Power down your ship and prepare to be boarded. Mina ran back into the workshop. She grabbed every data storage device she could find and stuffed them into her pack. The files on the defense systems. The maps of trial chambers. Ji-hoon's personal logs, all of it. I repeat, power down your ship. Vren's voice was cold. Resistance will result in the destruction of your vessel. Mina ran to her ship. She could see the Confederation vessels descending. They were not taking chances. One of them was charging weapons. She threw herself into the cockpit and started the launch sequence. Her ship lifted off just as the first energy blast hit the ground where she had been standing. The ruins exploded behind her. Destroying evidence? Mina said into her comm. That is what I thought. She pushed her ship to maximum speed, climbing toward orbit. The Confederation ships moved to intercept. They were faster, better armed. But Mina had spent years running from people who wanted to stop her. She triggered her faster-than-light drive early, too early while still in the planet's gravity well. It was dangerous and stupid and broke a dozen safety regulations. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms screamed. But it worked. Space bent around her and the planet disappeared. Behind her, Commander Vren watched from his command ship. He was a tall reptilian, with scales that reflected the light from his screens. His face showed no emotion as he gave the order. Destroy the surface facilities. All of them. I want nothing left. Commander, there are historical artifacts down there, one of his officers said. Evidence of extinct species. I am aware, Vren said. Destroy them anyway. The fleet opened fire. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, turning the ruins into molten slag. The workshop where Ji-hoon had spent decades building his library vanished in seconds. The entire plateau became a crater of melted rock and metal. When it was over, Vren sat back in his chair. He looked tired. The council was right to quarantine this place, he said quietly. The humans are not like other species. They do not accept limits. They do not understand when they should stop. And now one of them has proof that they survived our trial centuries ago. What do we do? The officer asked. Vren was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, we pray she does not reach human space. Because if she does, everything changes. But it was already too late. Mina's ship was racing toward the human colonial network, and in her cargo hold, she carried the complete records of how Park Ji-hoon had beaten the gauntlet of ascension. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity could do. The Grand Council chamber was a massive sphere that floated in the center of the Confederation capital. Inside, representatives from 100 species gathered to witness the trial of Kang Dae-hyun. But everyone knew this was not really about one man breaking into the Hall of Extinction. This was about what he had found there. Dae-hyun stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by holographic projections of the council members. Some looked like insects, others looked like plants or crystals or things that had no comparison to Earth life. All of them watched him with expressions that ranged from curiosity to anger. The High Arbiter Seln floated above the rest. She was an ethereal being, mostly energy contained in a vaguely humanoid shape. Her voice resonated through the chamber without sound, speaking directly into the minds of everyone present. Kang Dae-hyun, you stand accused of violating the sanctity of the Hall of Extinction, theft of protected council data, and conspiracy to undermine galactic order. How do you answer? Dae-hyun looked up at her calmly. Guilty of the first two, not guilty of the third. I was just looking for the truth. Murmurs ran through the council. Seln's form flickered slightly, the equivalent of a frown. The truth is not yours to seek, she said. The hall contains sacred records. The final moments of species who attempted the gauntlet and failed. These records are protected for a reason. Protected, Dae-hyun said. Or hidden. The murmurs grew louder. Seln raised one glowing hand and the chamber fell silent. Explain yourself. Dae-hyun smiled. 300 years ago, a human named Park Ji-hoon attempted your gauntlet of ascension. According to your records, he died like everyone else. But he didn't die, did he? He survived. He beat your trial. And you couldn't handle that. That is a lie, one of the council members said. She was an insectoid similar to Adjudicator Trell. No records exist of any human attempting the gauntlet. Because you erased them, Dae-hyun said. He looked around the chamber. You built your entire government on the principle that only worthy species can pass the trial. The gauntlet proves who deserves to join the council and who doesn't. But what happens when someone you classified as unworthy survives? What happens when your perfect test fails? Seln's form grew brighter. You know nothing of our reasons. Then tell me, Dae-hyun said. Tell everyone here. Tell the galaxy that is watching this broadcast. Why did you hide the fact that a human survived your trial? The chamber erupted, council members arguing with each other in a dozen languages. Daehyun had made sure this trial was broadcast to every species in the galaxy. Whatever happened here, everyone would see it. Selm's power filled the chamber, forcing silence again. When she spoke, her voice was cold. Very well. You want truth? Here is truth. 300 years ago, a human did attempt the gauntlet. We had been observing Earth, studying your species. We saw your violence, your wars, your inability to cooperate even with your own kind. We classified you as a chaotic species, likely to fail any serious test of worthiness. She paused. The chamber was completely quiet now. Park Ji-hoon proved us wrong. He not only survived the trial, he dominated it. He turned our defense systems into toys. He treated the most lethal test in galactic history like an amusing game. And when we came to congratulate him, he refused to leave. He stayed in the trial zone and built a home there, just to prove he could. Daehyun felt a surge of pride for an ancestor he had never met. We faced a crisis, Seln continued. Our system of government was built on the gauntlet. If a species as chaotic as humanity could pass it, what did that say about our other judgments? What about the species we had rejected? Were they also capable of passing if they approached the trial differently? So you lied, Daehyun said quietly. You declared Ji-hoon dead. You quarantined the zone. You erased the records. And you've been watching Earth ever since, waiting to see if he was unique or if all humans were like him. Seln's silence was answer enough. A new voice spoke from the chamber entrance. Which brings us to why I'm here. Everyone turned. Ambassador Choi Yuna walked into the chamber with steady steps. She was an older woman, her hair gray but her eyes sharp. Behind her came a delegation of human colonial representatives. Ambassador Choi, Seln said, "This trial does not concern you. It concerns all of humanity," Yuna said. She moved to stand beside Daehyun. "You've been judging us based on one man's success 3 centuries ago, wondering if we're all capable of what he did. Well, let's find out." She looked up at the council. "Humanity formally challenges the gauntlet of ascension. We will attempt the trial publicly with all species watching. If we succeed, you will grant us full council membership and release all suppressed records about humanity's history in the galaxy. If we fail, we will withdraw all colonial claims and accept permanent minor species status." The chamber exploded with noise. Council members argued, shouted, demanded explanations. This had never happened before. Species did not challenge the gauntlet. They requested it, begged for the opportunity. They did not throw it in the council's face as a challenge. "You cannot force us to accept," Seln said. "Actually, I can." Yuna smiled. "Your own laws say any species can request to attempt the gauntlet. You can delay, you can discourage, but you cannot refuse without cause. And if you do refuse, well, that broadcast Daehyun mentioned, the whole galaxy is watching. They're wondering why the council is afraid to test humanity." Seln's form flickered rapidly. She was trapped and she knew it. If the council refused, it would look like they feared humanity. If they accepted, they risked another human succeeding and proving their system was flawed. "The gauntlet is not a game," Seln said finally. 97 species have attempted the trial you are requesting. The Forge of Last Light, all of them died. The longest survival time was 6 cycles. Most died within hours. "We understand the risks," Yuna said. "Who will attempt?" Another council member asked. "Who among your species is foolish enough to volunteer?" "I will." A woman stepped forward from the human delegation. She was young, maybe 30, with short black hair and the kind of calm expression that came from seeing terrible things and surviving them. "My name is Kim Sora," she said. "I work in disaster relief. I spend my time going into situations everyone else runs away from. I find solutions when there aren't any, and I'm not afraid of your trial." "You should be," Seln said. But there was something in her voice. Not anger. Respect, maybe. Or fear, the council voted. It took 3 hours of debate, but in the end they had no choice. The vote passed. Humanity would attempt the gauntlet. The trial would take place in 1 month. Time for preparation. For Sora to study everything known about the Forge of Last Light. Time for the galaxy to watch and wait, and wonder if humans were really as stubborn as they seemed. Daehyun was released, all charges dropped. As he walked out of the council chamber with Yuna, he asked the question that everyone was thinking. Can she do it? Can Sora actually survive? Yuna was quiet for a moment. Park Ji-hoon survived with nothing but his wits and a refusal to quit. Sora has those things plus 300 years of human advancement, plus something Jihoon didn't have. What? She has the data Mina recovered. Jihoon's complete analysis of trial systems, his maps, his strategies, everything he learned during his time in that trial chamber. Daehyun smiled. So we're cheating again. No, Yuna said. We're learning from our mistakes. That's what humans do. We fail, we study, we adapt, and we try again. The council thought they could hide Jihoon's success and we would never know. But they forgot something important. What? Humans are really, really good at finding things other people want to stay hidden. 1 month later, Kim Sora stood at the entrance to the Forge of Last Light. Behind her, broadcast equipment captured every moment for a galaxy of viewers. Ahead of her was a doorway into a pocket dimension, where reality itself would try to kill her. She checked her environmental suit one last time. No weapons. No advanced technology. Just the suit, her mind, and everything she had learned from Park Ji-hoon's notes. Ready? The technician asked. Sora thought about Ji-hoon, alone in that trial chamber 300 years ago, deciding to turn a death trap into his personal playground. She thought about all the species that had died here, running in fear until the machines caught them. She thought about what it meant to be human. To look at impossible odds and say, "Watch me." "I'm ready," she said. The door opened. Sora stepped through, and 30 cycles of defiance began. The first thing Sora noticed about the Forge of Last Light was that it hated her immediately. Gravity shifted beneath her feet, pulling her sideways into a wall. She rolled with the impact, using the momentum to push herself toward a support pillar. The gravity changed again, trying to slam her into the ceiling. She caught the pillar and held on. Around her, the trial chamber stretched in impossible directions. Walls curved into themselves. The floor became the ceiling. Distance had no meaning here. This was a pocket dimension, a space where the normal rules of physics were suggestions at best. And somewhere in this nightmare, the Sentinels were waking up. Sora heard them before she saw them, a mechanical whine that set her teeth on edge. She pulled herself along the pillar, moving toward what looked like a stable section of floor. The gravity cooperated for a moment, letting her land on both feet. The first sentinel appeared around a corner. It was a floating sphere of dark metal, covered in sensors and weapons. Old technology, but still deadly. The machine's sensors swept across her, analyzing, categorizing, preparing to hunt. Sora did what every species before her had done. She ran, the sentinel followed. Energy blasts scorched the walls where she had been standing. Sora dove through a doorway and kept moving. Behind her, 2 more sentinels joined the first. They coordinated their attack, cutting off escape routes, herding her toward kill zones. She found a small space behind a collapsed wall and squeezed into it. The sentinels searched for a moment, then moved on. Sora waited, counting her heartbeats, trying to calm her breathing. Cycle 1 was survival. Nothing more. Across the galaxy, billions watched the broadcast. They saw Sora running, hiding, barely staying ahead of the machines. They nodded knowingly. Another species learning the hard way that the gauntlet could not be beaten. In the human observation ship orbiting the trial zone, Daehyun and Mina watched different screens. Daehyun had Jihoon's notes open, comparing them to what Sora was experiencing. Mina monitored the sentinel movements, looking for patterns. "She's doing exactly what they expect," Mina said. "Running and hiding. For now," Daehyun said. "Give her time." Cycle 2 began when Sora's suit timer hit the 24-hour mark. She had found a relatively stable section of the chamber and slept for a few hours, wedged into a corner where the sentinels had trouble scanning. When she woke, she did something different. She stopped running. Instead, she started watching. Every time a sentinel passed, she noted its patrol route. She timed how long between sweeps. She observed how they communicated with each other, the brief pulses of light that signaled coordination. Park Ji-hoon's notes had been clear on this point. The sentinels were not truly intelligent. They were advanced, adaptive, but still just machines following complex programming, and all programs had patterns. By Cycle 5, Sora had mapped a dozen different patrol routes. She knew which sentinels were aggressive and which were cautious. She knew where the gravity shifts were predictable and where they were random. She started leaving marks on the walls, small scratches, barely visible, but enough for her to navigate by. She was turning the chaos into something she could understand. On Cycle 10, she made her first real move. One of the sentinels had a predictable route that took it past a section where gravity regularly reversed. Sora waited until the machine was in position, then triggered a piece of debris to fall into its path. When the sentinel moved to avoid, gravity reversed. The machine slammed into the ceiling with enough force to crack its outer casing. It was not destroyed, but it was damaged. It would be slower now, easier to avoid. Sora carved a message on the nearest wall where the cameras could see it. Day 10. Sentinel-4 has a timing flaw in its left sensor array. Embarrassing, really. The galactic audience began to take notice. This human was not acting like prey anymore. She was studying the predators. By cycle 15, Sora had identified a crucial weakness in the Sentinel programming. They adapted to fear responses and aggressive behavior. They could handle prey that ran or prey that fought. But they were confused by prey that did neither. Sora started treating the trial like a research project. She took notes on her suit's recorder. She tested theories about environmental hazards. When a sentinel found her, she did not run in panic. She walked away calmly, timing her movements to stay just outside its optimal firing range. The machines adapted, trying new hunting patterns, but every time they did, Sora learned something new. On cycle 18, the atmosphere in the chamber shifted to a toxic mix. Sora's suit filtered it easily, but the change revealed something interesting. The environmental controls were automated, cycling through different hazards on a schedule. And the Sentinels knew that schedule. She could use that. Cycle 20 saw the first Sentinel failure. Sora had spent days setting up the trap, moving small pieces of debris, timing everything perfectly. When Sentinel-4 passed through a narrow corridor, she triggered a controlled gravity shift that sent it directly into a cloud of corrosive atmosphere. The machine's damaged casing could not protect it. It fell from the air, dead. The galactic broadcast showed Sora standing over the destroyed machine. She looked at the nearest camera and waved. "One down," she said. In the council chambers, High Arbiter Seln watched with growing concern. The other council members were arguing, their voices overlapping in a dozen languages. "This should not be possible," one of them said. "The Sentinels adapt. They learn. How is she staying ahead of them?" "Because she is learning faster," Seln said quietly. "Just like Park Ji-hoon did." By cycle 25, 2 more Sentinels were offline. Sora had turned the trial chamber into her laboratory. She knew every hazard, every patrol route, every system vulnerability. The machines were still hunting her, but she was hunting them right back. Dae-hyun watched from the observation ship with a mixture of pride and awe. "She's not just surviving. She's dominating. She's doing what humans do," Mina said. "Taking something meant to kill us and turning it into a tool." Cycle 28 brought the discovery. Sora found a section of the chamber that should not exist. A small alcove hidden behind a collapsed wall. Inside she found marks on the metal. Old marks carved 300 years ago. Made it to day 30, decided to stay and redecorate. "Welcome to the family business. Ji-hoon." Beneath the message was a small toolkit, primitive by galactic standards but beautifully designed. Each tool was simple, elegant, built to work without power or complex systems. The kind of things someone would make if they understood that fancy technology was not always the answer. Sora picked up a tool that looked like a pry bar. She tested its weight. Perfect balance. Ji-hoon had been an engineer as well as a survivor. She added her own message below his. "Found your tools. They're helping. Thanks for the head start." Sora cycle 30 arrived. Sora stood in the center of the chamber, exhausted but very much alive. The remaining Sentinels converged on her position. This was it. The final test. Either she survived this or she did not. She held Ji-hoon's pry bar in one hand. In her other hand, she held a piece of equipment she had built from salvaged Sentinel parts. It would only work once, but once would be enough. The Sentinels surrounded her, weapons charging. They had adapted to everything she had done so far. They had learned to counter her strategies, but they had not learned to counter what she was about to do. Sora activated her device. It sent out a pulse that every Sentinel sensor registered as a massive power surge in the chamber's core systems. The machine's programming did what it was designed to do. It responded to the threat. All of the Sentinels turned away from Sora and moved toward the false power surge. In that moment, when their sensors were focused on the wrong target, Sora used Ji-hoon's pry bar to access a maintenance panel she had identified weeks ago. She pulled 3 specific conduits in a sequence that should not have worked, but Ji-hoon's notes had been clear. The pocket dimension stability field had a failure mode. If you knew exactly where to strike and in what order, you could trigger a cascade. The chamber shuddered. Reality flickered. The sentinels froze in place as their connection to the trial systems failed. And then the forge of last light began to collapse. Sora ran, not in fear this time, but with purpose. She knew exactly where the exit was. She had been planning this route since Cycle 15. Behind her, the pocket dimension fell apart. The walls dissolved. The gravity went haywire. The sentinels fell from the air like dead leaves. Sora dove through the exit portal just as everything behind her imploded. She landed hard on the solid floor outside the trial chamber. Alarms were screaming. Technicians were running everywhere, trying to understand what had happened. High Arbiter Seln appeared, her energy form bright with shock and anger. "You destroyed the trial chamber," Seln said. "You broke the forge of last light." Sora pulled off her helmet. Her face was covered in sweat and dust. She looked up at the Arbiter and smiled. The trial wasn't to survive. It was to adapt. I adapted, I won, and I did it using tools a human left here 300 years ago. She held up Jihoon's pry bar. "You asked if all humans were like Park Jihoon. Here's your answer. We all are. We all look at impossible situations and ask, how can I break this? We all refuse to quit. And we all leave tools behind for the next person because that's what we do." The galaxy watched. Billions of beings saw a human woman, exhausted but unbroken, standing in the wreckage of a trial that had killed every other species that attempted it. Sora looked directly at the broadcast camera. "Humanity survived. Now give us what you promised." The Grand Council chamber was chaos. Representatives from 100 species argued over what had just happened. Some demanded that Sora's trial be invalidated. Others insisted that humanity had earned their place. And a few, the honest ones, admitted they were simply afraid. High Arbiter Seln floated above the noise, her energy form flickering with barely controlled emotion. She had lived for centuries, had overseen thousands of council decisions, but she had never faced anything like this. A species that refused to follow the rules. A species that looked at their most sacred trial and broke it. A species that had been doing this for 300 years without anyone knowing. "Order." Seln's voice filled everyone's mind. The chamber fell silent. "We must decide. Did Kim Sora complete the trial or not?" "She destroyed the trial chamber," Adjudicator Trell said. His insectoid form was rigid with anger. "That cannot be considered a success." "It is sabotage," Ambassador Choi Yuna stood. "The trial's purpose was to test adaptation and survival. My colleague did both. She survived 30 cycles in the most lethal environment you could create. The fact that she also destroyed that environment proves how thoroughly she dominated it." "She cheated," another council member said. "She used equipment left by the previous human." "Park Jihoon's tools were in the trial chamber for 300 years, Yuna countered. "Your own security never found them. If they were important enough to be considered cheating, perhaps you should have maintained your testing facility better." More arguing, more accusations. Yuna let them rage for a moment before speaking again. "You're avoiding the real question. The trial was never about the rules. It was about proving worthiness. Park Jihoon proved humanity worthy 3 centuries ago. You rejected that proof. Kim Sora proved it again. Will you reject us a second time?" The chamber went quiet. "Because if you do," Yuna continued, "the galaxy is watching. They saw Sora survive. They saw her win. And they're wondering what other truths the Council has hidden. How many other species did you reject unfairly? How many times has your judgment been wrong?" Seln knew Yuna was right. This was no longer about one trial. This was about the Council's credibility. If they rejected humanity now after everything the galaxy had witnessed, their authority would be questioned forever. "We will vote," Seln said, "all in favor of recognizing humanity's completion of the gauntlet and granting full Council membership." The vote took hours. There were arguments, negotiations, deals made in private. But in the end, the decision was clear. Humanity passed. Barely. "In addition," Seln said, her voice heavy with something that might have been regret, "we will release all suppressed records regarding humanity's previous contact with Confederation systems. The Hall of Extinction will be opened for review." Yuna bowed slightly. "The human delegation accepts these terms, but we have one additional request." "You dare ask for more?" Trell said, "Not a demand. A suggestion." Yuna looked around the chamber. "The Hall of Extinction is a monument to failure. But failure is not shameful. Every species that attempted the gauntlet was brave. They tried something impossible. They should be remembered for their courage, not just their deaths. She paused, letting her words sink in. Humanity proposes that the hall be renamed. Let it become the Archives of Persistence, a library that celebrates the attempt, not just the outcome. A place where species can learn from those who came before. The chamber was silent. Then, surprisingly, it was Seln who spoke first. That is acceptable. The decision was made. The Hall of Extinction would be transformed, and humanity would help lead that transformation. 3 months later, Daehyun stood in the newly renamed Archives of Persistence. The hall looked different now. Where there had been cold displays of death, there were now stories. Each species that had attempted the trials was given a full exhibit, showing not just how they died, but who they were, what they believed, why they had tried. It was no longer a monument to failure. It was a celebration of bravery. Daehyun was updating the human entry when Mina found him. "Still working?" she asked. "Someone has to get this right," Daehyun said. He gestured to the display. Park Ji-hoon's full story. Everything he did, everything he left behind. The galaxy deserves to know. The display showed Ji-hoon's message, his tools, his notes, but also his philosophy. The idea that impossible was just a word and words could be changed. Status: survived. Daehyun read from the entry. Method: stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Notes: do not underestimate humanity's inability to recognize when they should quit. Mina laughed. That sounds about right. How's Sora doing? Daehyun asked. She's become famous across the galaxy. Half the species want her to teach them her survival techniques. The other half are terrified of her. Good, let them be afraid. Maybe they'll think twice before underestimating humans again. Elsewhere in the capital, Sora met with a group of young beings from various species. They had all requested to attempt the gauntlet trials, inspired by what they had witnessed. Is it true you were not afraid? One of them asked. She was a small crystalline being, her voice like wind chimes. I was terrified, Sora said honestly. Every single day. Fear is not weakness. Fear is your brain telling you to be careful. But you kept going, another said. Because being afraid is not the same as giving up. You can be scared and still move forward. That's not bravery. That's just being human. She showed them Ji-hoon's pry bar, which she now carried everywhere. A human I never met left this for me 300 years in the future. He didn't know if anyone would find it. He didn't know if it would help. But he left it anyway because that's what we do. We help the next person. We leave tools behind. She looked at each of them. Whatever trial you face, remember that. You're not alone. Someone before you tried this. Learn from them. And when you succeed, leave something behind for whoever comes next. The young beings left inspired, and across the galaxy something shifted. The trials were no longer seen as impossible barriers. They were challenges. Difficult, yes. Dangerous, absolutely. But not impossible. Because if humans could do it, why couldn't anyone? 6 months after Sora's trial, Mina led an expedition back to the quarantine world. The ruins had been destroyed by Commander Vren's attack, but the planet itself was still there. And buried beneath the melted slag, protected by the same shielding Ji-hoon had built into his workshop, were data cores. They recovered everything. Every note Ji-hoon had made. Every observation. Every lesson he had learned during his decades in the Void Sector. The human colonial government established a memorial on the site. Not just for Ji-hoon, but for every being who had tried the trials. A massive wall where names could be added. Successes and failures both. Because the point was not winning or losing. The point was trying. Mina added the first name personally. Park Ji-hoon. Below it, his final message. He survived to prove it was possible. I survived to prove it wasn't luck. Whoever comes next, don't let them tell you what you can't do. Kim Sora. At the memorial's dedication ceremony, Ambassador Yuna spoke to a crowd of humans and aliens alike. For 300 years, the galaxy tried to hide what one human accomplished. They tried to pretend it didn't happen. But the truth always comes out. Not because we're clever or persistent, though we are both, but because we refuse to let others tell our story for us. She gestured to the memorial wall. This wall will grow. Other species will attempt the trials. Some will fail. Some will succeed. All of them will be remembered. Because that's what we learned from Park Ji-hoon. The attempt matters. The courage matters. And no one has the right to erase that. The crowd applauded. Beings from a dozen species united in the understanding that impossible was just a challenge, not a conclusion. A year after Sora's trial, the Confederation recorded 43 new attempts at various gauntlet challenges. 31 were successful. Species that had never considered themselves worthy suddenly found the courage to try. The Council grudgingly admitted that humanity's influence was changing the galaxy. Some Council members saw this as dangerous. Others saw it as necessary. High Arbiter Seln visited the Archives of Persistence one day and found Daehyun still working. "You spend a lot of time here," she said. "Someone has to make sure the records are accurate," Daehyun replied. "No more hidden files. No more lies about who succeeded and who failed." Seln was quiet for a moment. "We were wrong. About your species. About the trials. About what worthiness means. Yes, you were. But you were also dangerous. You still are. Humanity does not accept limits. You look at rules as suggestions. You turn everything into a challenge." Daehyun smiled. "Is that a complaint or a compliment?" "I have not decided yet," Seln admitted. "But I do know this. The galaxy is different now because of you. More chaotic, more unpredictable, but also more honest. We can no longer hide behind our trials and pretend they measure anything objective." "Good," Daehyun said. "Maybe now species will be judged by what they actually do, not by whether they can survive an artificial test." "Perhaps." Seln turned to leave, then paused. "There is something you should know. We have been monitoring deep space. There are signals from regions we have never explored. Ancient civilizations, possibly. Or new ones. Challenges that make the gauntlet look simple. And I suspect humanity will want to investigate." "You cannot help yourselves," Daehyun grinned. "You're probably right. When you do remember something. The galaxy is vast. There are things out there that even humans might find impossible." "Maybe," Daehyun said, "but we'll leave a message for them anyway." Deep in unexplored space, a human colony ship passed an ancient alien beacon. The beacon was millions of years old, built by a civilization long dead. It broadcast warnings in languages no one could understand. The colony ship's crew studied the beacon briefly, then did what humans always did. They tagged it with their own message. Humanity was here. Your move. And somewhere in the archives, the entry for Park Ji-hoon's trial was updated one final time. Species human status persistent. Last known message. Try again. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans did not accept impossible. They did not recognize limits. They did not understand when they should stop. And they always left a message for whoever came next. Because that was what it meant to be human. To look at the impossible and say, "Watch me." To fail and try again. To succeed and leave tools behind. To be the species that signed their name at the end of the galaxy's hardest tests with two simple words. Try again.